A single father, a cruel wager, 3 months in a stranger's home that was meant to break him. But sometimes the cruelest bets lead to the most unexpected miracles. Sometimes losing everything means finding what you've been searching for all along. This is a story about a man who thought he had nothing left to lose until he discovered he had everything left to gain. Before we continue, please tell us, where in the world are you tuning in from? We love seeing how far our stories travel. The air inside Haggerty's bar smelled like stale beer and broken dreams. Raymond sat alone at the counter, staring into a glass he didn't really want to drink from. The noise around him, laughter, clinking glasses, the drone of a sports game on TV, felt like it was coming from underwater. Everything had felt that way for 2 years now. "Boys, look who's here." Raymond's shoulders tensed. He knew that voice. Dean Pritchard, 35 years old, twice divorced, and Cedar Falls resident bully who never grew out of high school. Raymond Calloway, the walking ghost himself. Raymond kept his eyes forward, his jaw tight. He shouldn't have come here. Doreen, his mother-in-law, had practically pushed him out the door tonight, insisting she'd watch Pascal and nature overnight. "You need to breathe," she'd said, "just for one night." But breathing felt impossible when every second reminded him of what he'd lost. Dean slid onto the stool beside him, bringing with him the smell of expensive cologne and cheap cruelty. "You know what I've been thinking about, Calloway? I've been thinking about how you used to be somebody in this town. Best poker player Cedar Falls ever saw. Remember that?" Raymond said nothing. His knuckles went white around his glass. "Your pretty little wife used to sit right there," Dean pointed to a corner booth, "cheering you on like you were winning the World Series. What was her name again? Annette?" The sound of her name in Dean's mouth made Raymond's stomach turn. "But that was before, wasn't it?" Dean's voice dropped to a theatrical whisper. "Before she died, and you turned into this." He gestured at Raymond's thin frame, the way his shirt hung loose on shoulders that used to be broader. "Tell you what, I'm feeling generous tonight. 1 poker game, just like the old days. Not interested." "Hear me out." Dean leaned closer. His friends Garrett and Lonnie had gathered behind him now, grinning like hyenas. "You win, I'll hand you $5,000 cash, right here, right now. That would help with those medical bills you're still paying off, wouldn't it?" Raymond's chest tightened. The bills, the endless, crushing bills from Annette's 3-week hospital stay before she died. The autoimmune disease they'd discovered too late. The treatments that hadn't worked. The funeral costs he was still drowning in. "And if you win," Raymond heard himself ask. Dean's smile turned razor sharp. "If I win, you and those kids of yours move in with Pauline Dufresne for 3 months. Out on Miller Road. You know who I'm talking about. The fat girl. 300 pounds if she's an ounce." He laughed, and his friends joined in. "You'll live in her house, eat her food, be her little family. 3 whole months." The bar had gone quiet. Everyone was listening now, phones coming out, people gathering closer. Cedar Falls was a small town where gossip was currency, and this was about to be a jackpot. Raymond should have walked away. Every rational part of his brain was screaming at him to stand up and leave. But exhaustion had worn down every defense he had. The sleepless nights, the phantom warmth of Annette's body that he still reached for in bed, the way Pascal, his 8-year-old son, had stopped smiling, the way 6-year-old Nature cried for her mother when she thought Raymond couldn't hear. He was so tired of being weak, so tired of being the broken man everyone pitied. "Fine," Raymond said. The bar erupted. Dean had been a phenomenal poker player once. Back when Annette was alive, they'd played together on date nights, and she always said he could read people like open books. She'd sit across from him, her dark eyes sparkling, calling his bluffs and raising his bets, making him laugh until his sides hurt. That felt like a lifetime ago. As Dean shuffled the cards with practiced confidence, Raymond tried to focus, tried to remember the patterns, the tells, the instincts that had once made him unbeatable. But his hands were shaking. His mind kept drifting to that night 2 years ago when Annette had collapsed in their kitchen. She'd been making dinner, spaghetti, Pascal's favorite, when she just dropped. Raymond had caught her before she hit the floor, his heart exploding with terror as her eyes rolled back. "Annette, baby, stay with me." In the ambulance, she'd squeezed his hand and whispered, "I'm sorry. I didn't listen to you." For months, he'd begged her to see a doctor about her exhaustion. For months, she'd said she was fine, just tired, like all mothers of young children were tired. By the time they discovered the truth, her organs were already shutting down. "Calloway, you in or out?" Raymond blinked, pulling himself back to the present. Dean was staring at him with barely concealed glee. The first hand had already been dealt. Raymond picked up his cards, a pair of sevens, mediocre at best. The game lasted 90 minutes, but it felt like seconds. Raymond tried. He really tried, but grief had stolen his concentration. Sleepless nights had dulled his instincts. Every time he looked at his cards, he saw Annette's face in the hospital bed, tubes and wires everywhere, her hand so small and cold in his. Dean had been practicing. Dean had been waiting for exactly this opportunity, sharpening his skills for months, knowing that eventually Raymond's weakness would bring him back to this bar. When Raymond laid down his final hand, a pair of tens that couldn't beat Dean's 3 queens, the bar exploded with laughter and cheers. Dean stood up, arms raised in theatrical triumph. "Ladies and gentlemen, Raymond Calloway and his children will be moving in with the elephant on Miller Road first thing Monday morning." He turned to Raymond, his smile cruel and satisfied. "Hope you like living large, Calloway. Real large." The laughter followed Raymond all the way to his truck. He sat in the parking lot for an hour, engine off, hands gripping the steering wheel so tight his fingers went numb. What had he done? What had he just agreed to? Pascal and nature didn't deserve this. They'd already lost their mother. They didn't deserve a father who kept failing them over and over again. When Raymond finally drove home, dawn was breaking over Cedar Falls. He pulled into the driveway of the small rental house he could barely afford and just sat there, watching the sun rise, feeling like the worst father in the world. Inside, Pascal and nature would be waking up soon in their beds. They'd come running to hug him, still in their pajamas, innocent and trusting, and he'd have to tell them they were moving again. Tell them about a bet their father had lost. Tell them everything was going to be okay when he didn't believe it himself. Raymond dropped his forehead against the steering wheel and let the tears come. Pauline Dufresne heard about the bet before Sunday morning. She was sitting at her kitchen table, drinking coffee and watching the birds at her feeder when her phone started buzzing. Text after text, screenshot after screenshot. Social media posts laughing about the poor fool who has to live with Pauline. Photos of her from years ago with cruel captions. Comments speculating about how humiliated she must feel. Pauline set down her coffee cup with a steady hand and read every single message. 28 years old, and she'd been Cedar Falls' favorite punchline for as long as she could remember. The fat girl, the weird girl who never left her house, the girl who'd given up her entire youth to care for a dying father and never recovered. She hadn't always been this size. As a teenager, she'd been athletic, played softball, ran track, had friends and dreams, and a future that looked bright. Then her father had a massive stroke when she was 17. Her mother had abandoned them years before, so there was no one else.
just Pauline and her father in this old farmhouse, his body betraying him one function at a time. She'd dropped out of high school to care for him, 4 years of feeding him, bathing him, managing medications, watching him slowly fade away while her own life disappeared. He died when she was 21, and the grief nearly killed her. Alone in the house he'd left her, with no education, no job prospects, no one who cared whether she lived or died, Pauline had fallen into a darkness so complete she couldn't find the edges. Food became her only comfort. Eating was the one thing that made her feel something other than emptiness. By 28, she'd gained over 150 pounds, and she'd accepted that this was her life. Alone. Invisible except when someone needed a punchline.
But as Pauline sat at her kitchen table reading those cruel messages, something shifted inside her chest. She was tired of being the joke, tired of hiding, tired of giving people like Dean Pritchard the power to define her worth. They wanted her to be humiliated. They wanted her to slam the door in Raymond Calloway's face and prove she was exactly as pathetic as they believed. Pauline decided, in that moment, that she would not give them the satisfaction. Monday morning arrived, cold and gray. Raymond stood on Pauline Dufresne's porch at 9 o'clock sharp. Pascal and Nature on either side of him, each clutching one of his hands. His son's grip was tight with anxiety. His daughter's eyes were red from crying that morning. "Why do we have to move again, Daddy?" Nature had asked over breakfast, her little voice breaking his heart. "It's just for a little while, baby," Raymond had told her, unable to meet her eyes. "Just 3 months. It's gonna be okay." But standing on this porch now, Raymond didn't believe his own words. The farmhouse was old, but well-maintained, painted white with green shutters. A porch swing swayed gently in the breeze. The yard was neat, flowers blooming in carefully tended beds. It wasn't what Raymond had expected, though he hated himself for having expectations at all. He knocked. His heart hammered against his ribs. The door opened.
Pauline Dufresne stood before them, and Raymond's first thought, the one that made shame burn through him, was that Dean had been right about her size. She was a large woman, easily 300 pounds, wearing jeans and a simple blue sweater. But her face surprised him. Gentle brown eyes, a soft, kind expression. She didn't look angry or humiliated. She looked calm. "You must be Raymond," she said. Her voice was steady, without a trace of bitterness. "I'm Pauline. Come in. I made breakfast." Raymond blinked. You know why I'm here?" "I know exactly why you're here." Pauline looked him straight in the eyes, and Raymond felt like she could see right through him. "Dean Pritchard thinks living with me is a punishment. He thinks this is going to humiliate both of us." She stepped aside, gesturing for them to enter. "I think we should prove him wrong." For a long moment, Raymond couldn't move. He'd expected anger. He'd expected the door slammed in his face. He'd expected to be turned away so he could tell Dean the bet was off and face whatever consequences came next. He hadn't expected grace. "Come on," Pauline said gently, her gaze dropping to Pascal and Nature. "You two must be hungry. Do you like pancakes?" Nature's eyes widened. She loved pancakes. Annette used to make them every Sunday morning, always with chocolate chips arranged in smiley faces. "Yes, ma'am," Pascal said quietly, ever the protective older brother, squeezing his sister's hand. Pauline smiled, a real smile that reached her eyes, and held the door wider. "Then let's get you fed. We can figure everything else out after that." Raymond followed her inside, carrying their duffel bag over his shoulder, feeling like he'd just stepped into something he couldn't possibly understand. The farmhouse was warm and smelled like cinnamon and coffee. The kitchen was large, with yellow walls and white curtains, morning light streaming through clean windows. A table was already set with 4 plates, glasses of orange juice, and a platter of golden pancakes. Pauline moved slowly but with purpose, her size making her careful about how she navigated the space. She pulled out chairs for Pascal and Nature, served them pancakes with a gentleness that made Raymond's throat tight. "I'm Pascal," his son said politely, the way Annette had taught him. "I'm 8. This is my sister, Nature. She's 6.
"It's very nice to meet you both." Pauline set syrup and butter on the table. "I've got a big backyard if you want to play after breakfast. There's a tire swing and everything." Nature's face brightened for the first time all morning. "Really? Really?" Pauline glanced at Raymond. "You should eat too. You look like you haven't had a decent meal in weeks." She wasn't wrong. Raymond had lost 30 pounds since Annette died. Eating felt pointless most days. But he sat down because Pascal and Nature were watching him, and he needed to show them this was going to be okay, even if he didn't believe it yet. The pancakes were good, better than good, light and fluffy, with just the right amount of vanilla. Annette had been a terrible cook. She'd burned everything, laughed about it, ordered pizza instead. They'd joked that Raymond had married her for her sense of humor, not her culinary skills. The memory hit him like a physical blow. He set down his fork, suddenly unable to swallow. "You okay?" Pauline asked quietly. Across the table, Pascal was watching him with those two old eyes. 8 years old and already carrying the weight of knowing his father was barely holding on. "Why don't you two go explore the backyard?" Pauline suggested, sensing the tension. "I'll clean up here." Pascal hesitated, protective instincts warring with the chance to let his little sister be a kid for 5 minutes. Finally he nodded. "Come on, Nature, let's go see the swing." When the back door closed behind them, the kitchen fell into heavy silence.
Raymond forced himself to look at Pauline. "I'm sorry," he said, his voice rough, "for being here, for what this bet really means, for being part of something designed to mock you." Pauline was quiet for a moment, her hands resting on the table. "Can I tell you something, Raymond?" He nodded. "When I agreed to let you stay, it wasn't because I'm some kind of saint." She met his eyes, and there was steel beneath the gentleness. "It was because I was angry. I've spent my whole life being invisible or being a joke. My father got sick when I was 17, and I gave up everything to take care of him. No prom, no graduation, no college, no friends. Just me and him in this house year after year until he died." Her voice didn't waver, but Raymond could hear the pain underneath. "After he passed, I fell apart. I stopped caring about myself. I stopped caring about anything. And the world was happy to write me off. The fat girl, the weird girl, the girl who never leaves her house." She leaned forward slightly. "Dean Pritchard won of this bet to prove I'm worthless. I said yes because I wanted to prove I'm not." Raymond felt something crack open in his chest. "You're not worthless, Pauline. You're the furthest thing from it." "Neither are you." Her words landed like stones. "I don't know your story yet, Raymond, but I can see you're carrying something heavy. And I can see those children out there need their father to survive it." She stood, gathering plates. "So here's what I'm thinking. You're here for 3 months. We can spend that time being miserable, giving Dean exactly what he wants, or we can spend it figuring out how to be okay. Your choice." Through the window, Raymond could see Pascal pushing Nature on the tire swing. Both of them laughing. Actual, real laughter he hadn't heard in months. "Okay," he whispered. "Let's figure out how to be okay."
The first week was the hardest. Raymond couldn't stop thinking about the cruelty of the bet, the fact that his presence in this house was supposed to be a punishment for them both. Every time Pauline walked into a room, shame crawled up his spine. He threw himself into work, fixing things around the farmhouse that needed repair. The porch steps were rotting, the fence had gaps, the kitchen faucet leaked constantly. He worked from dawn until his body screamed for rest, partly to be useful and partly to avoid conversation. Pauline let him. She didn't push, didn't demand explanations. She simply made sure there was coffee ready every morning and dinner on the table every night. She was kind to Pascal and Nature in a way that made Raymond's chest ache, patient with their grief, gentle with their fears, never trying to replace what they'd lost. Pascal, always protective, watched Pauline carefully at first, but by the 3rd day, Raymond found his son helping her collect eggs from the chicken coop she kept out back, asking questions about the hens' names and why they pecked at shiny things. Nature fell in love with Pauline's garden. She followed the older woman everywhere, tiny hands helping pull weeds, learning the names of flowers, chattering about butterflies and birds. "Miss Polly," Nature said one afternoon. She'd started calling her that all on her own. "Do you think Mommy can see me from heaven?" Raymond, who had been fixing the fence nearby, froze. His daughter rarely talked about Annette. It hurt too much. Pauline knelt down slowly, her joints protesting, until she was eye level with Nature. She said, I think your mommy can see you, and I think she's very proud of the strong, kind girl you're becoming." Nature's eyes filled with tears. "I miss her." "I know you do, sweetheart. It's okay to miss her. It's okay to be sad." Pauline opened her arms and Nature fell into them, sobbing against her shoulder while she held her and didn't try to make the pain go away with empty promises.
Raymond had to turn away, his own tears blurring his vision. Through the fence, through the trees, through the weight pressing down on his chest, he heard Annette's voice from 2 years ago. "Promise me you'll let the kids be loved, Raymond. Promise me you won't shut everyone out." He hadn't been able to promise her that. He'd been too busy begging her not to leave. But watching Pauline hold his crying daughter with such tenderness, Raymond wondered if maybe Annette had somehow known. Maybe she'd known he'd end up here, in this moment, with this woman who understood that grief needed space to breathe. That night, after the children were asleep, Raymond found Pauline sitting on the porch string. The sky was full of stars. The air smelled like honeysuckle. "Thank you," he said quietly, "for what you did with nature today." Pauline looked over at him. "She's a beautiful child. They both are. They lost their mother 2 years ago. Annette. Her name was Annette. She was 29. "I'm so sorry." Raymond sat down on the porch steps, suddenly exhausted. She'd been tired for months. I begged her to see a doctor, but she kept saying she was fine. By the time we found out it was an autoimmune disease, it was too late. She died 3 weeks after diagnosis. The grief was still so sharp it cut. I should have made her go to the doctor. Should have noticed sooner. Should have... "You can't know that," Pauline interrupted gently. "You can't know if it would have made a difference. Guilt like that will eat you alive if you let it." Raymond looked up at her. "You sound like you know." "I do." Pauline's expression was distant, remembering. "When my father died, I felt relieved. Just for a second, this flash of relief, that it was over, that I was free. Then the guilt came, and it nearly destroyed me. How could I feel relief? What kind of monster was I?"
You're not a monster. You gave up your life for him. And you loved your wife with everything you had. But sometimes love isn't enough to save people, Raymond. Sometimes bad things happen to good people, and all we can do is survive them. They sat in silence for a while, the swing creaking gently, the night settling around them like a blanket. For the first time in 2 years, Raymond didn't feel so alone. By the second month, something had shifted. Raymond and Pauline had fallen into a rhythm, not forced, not awkward, but natural. They drank coffee together in the mornings while Pascal and Nature ate breakfast. They talked about small things, the weather, the repairs Raymond was making, the recipes Pauline wanted to try. Nothing deep, nothing scary, just companionship. Pascal had started bringing Pauline his homework, asking for help with math problems Raymond couldn't figure out. "Miss Polly's really smart, Dad," he'd said one evening. "She knows everything about fractions." Nature had declared Pauline her best friend when Pauline taught her how to bake chocolate chip cookies from scratch. "When we go back home, can Miss Polly come too?" asked Raymond one night at bedtime, and he hadn't known how to answer. Raymond found himself noticing things about Pauline that Dean Pritchard and everyone in Cedar Falls had decided didn't matter. The way she hummed while she cooked. The gentle curve of her smile when Pascal told jokes. The intelligence in her eyes, sharp and observant. She'd educated herself through books, hundreds of them lining the shelves in her living room. She could talk about literature, history, science, anything. And she was kind, deeply, genuinely kind, in a way Raymond hadn't encountered in years. One rainy Tuesday night in the middle of the second month, everything changed. The children were asleep. Raymond and Pauline sat on the covered porch watching the storm roll across the fields. Lightning flickered in the distance. Thunder rumbled low and deep. The air smelled like wet earth and electricity. "Can I ask you something?" Pauline's voice was quiet, almost lost in the rain.
Anything.
Why did you really agree to that bet? Raymond had been expecting this question, dreading it. I was tired, he said finally. Tired of being the broken widower everyone pities. Tired of drowning in bills I can't pay. Tired of failing my kids over and over. He swallowed hard. I wanted to prove I wasn't completely destroyed. I wanted to win something, anything, even if it meant making the stupidest decision of my life. Do you regret it? Raymond turned to look at her. Really look at her. At the woman who'd opened her door when she had every right to slam it, who'd fed his children and held his daughter while she cried, who'd given him a place to heal without demanding anything in return. No, he said softly. I don't regret it. Not anymore. Pauline's eyes glistened with tears. I've been alone for 4 years, Raymond. 4 years in this house with nothing but books and regrets for company. When everyone started posting about the bet, I wanted to disappear. I wanted to prove them right, that I was too pathetic to even open my door. She wiped at her eyes. But then I got angry, and I decided I'd rather be angry than ashamed. So I let you in, thinking maybe we could both survive this. But now, her voice broke. Now I'm scared. Of what? Of you leaving in a month. Of going back to being alone. Of this being the happiest I've been in years and knowing it has an expiration date. Raymond's heart was pounding. He stood up slowly, crossed the porch, and knelt down in front of her chair. Pauline, look at me. She did, tears streaming down her face. You saved us, Raymond said, his voice raw with emotion. You opened your door and your home and your heart to 3 broken people, and you started putting us back together without even realizing it. Pascal laughs now, nature plays again, and me, I can breathe. For the first time in 2 years, I can actually breathe. Pauline, I don't want to leave. When the 3 months are up, I don't want to go back to that rental house that feels like a tomb. I don't want to take my kids away from the first place they've been happy since their mother died. And I don't... He reached out, hesitated, then gently took her hand. I don't want to be apart from you. Pauline stared at him, her breath catching. You don't know what you're saying. I know exactly what I'm saying. I'm saying that somewhere in these past 2 months, you became important to me. You became home. I'm not her, Raymond. I'm not Annette. I know that. I loved Annette with everything I had, and losing her nearly killed me. But you're not Annette. You're Pauline. And you're... He struggled to find the words. You're everything I didn't know I needed. The rain poured down around them, drumming on the porch roof, washing the world clean. Pauline pulled him up gently, then stood, slowly, carefully. For a moment, they just looked at each other. 2 wounded people who'd found each other in the wreckage. Then, Pauline wrapped her arms around him, and Raymond held her tight, breathing in the scent of her hair, feeling her heartbeat against his chest, and something inside him that had been frozen for 2 years finally began to thaw. The last month flew by too fast. Raymond and Pauline had crossed some invisible line that night in the rain, and there was no going back. Not that either of them wanted to. They didn't rush into anything physical. Both of them knew this was too important to mess up. But there was an understanding now, a tenderness that hadn't been there before. Raymond would catch Pauline watching him while he worked, a soft smile on his face. Pauline would find small gifts Raymond left for her, wildflowers on her pillow, her favorite tea restocked, a book she'd mentioned wanting. Pascal and Nature noticed. Kids always did. Dad, are you and Miss Polly in love? Nature asked one night, her voice full of innocent curiosity. Raymond had been tucking her in, and the question caught him completely off guard. Would that be okay with you if we were? Nature thought about it seriously. Mommy would want you to be happy. She told me that before she went to heaven. She said, "Take care of Daddy for me, okay? Make sure he remembers how to smile." Raymond's eyes burned with tears. "She said that to you?" "Uh-huh, and you smile a lot now, Daddy, when you look at Miss Polly." "Do I?" "Yup, so I think it's okay."
Pascal's approval came differently. He knocked on Raymond's bedroom door late one evening, his expression serious. "Dad, can we talk?" "Of course, buddy. Come in." Pascal sat on the edge of the bed, fidgeting with his hands. "I know Mom's not coming back." Raymond's heart clenched. "Pascal, I'm not a little kid anymore, Dad." "I know she's not coming back." His voice was steady, but his eyes were wet. "And I know you're really sad. You try to hide it, but I can tell." "I'm sorry, son. I never wanted you to worry about me." "But I don't worry as much anymore. Not since we came here." Pascal looked up at him. "Miss Polly makes you happy. She makes all of us happy. And I think Mom would like her." Raymond pulled his son into a fierce hug. "You're the bravest kid I know." "Can we stay, Dad? After the 3 months? Can we please stay?" "I'm working on it, buddy. I promise I'm working on it." The truth was, Raymond had been thinking about nothing else. How could they make this work? The rental house lease was almost up anyway. He had already talked to his boss about taking on extra projects to save money. He'd even quietly spoken to a real estate lawyer about what it would take to officially move in with Pauline to make this arrangement permanent. But there was one more thing he needed to do first. One last ghost to lay to rest. 4 months after moving in with Pauline, 1 month after the official 3-month period had ended, 1 month after Raymond had quietly asked Pauline if they could stay and she had burst into tears, saying yes, Raymond walked into Haggerty's bar. The room went quiet the moment he entered. Heads turned, conversations stopped. Everyone in Cedar Falls had been watching the story unfold, waiting to see how the punchline would land.
Dean Pritchard sat in his usual spot, surrounded by Garrett and Lonnie, a beer in his hand, and that familiar smirk on his face. But when Raymond approached, not the broken shell he'd beaten months ago, but someone different, someone who stood straight and moved with purpose, Dean's smirk faltered. "Rematch," Raymond said clearly. His voice carried across the silent bar. Dean laughed nervously. "What?" "You heard me. Same game, same stakes, but reversed." Raymond pulled out the chair across from Dean and sat down. "I win, you stand up in front of everyone here and apologize to Pauline, publicly. You admit you were wrong about her." The bar erupted in murmurs. Phones came out. People gathered closer. This was going to be better than the first game. "And if I win?" Dean asked, though his confidence was clearly shaken. Raymond smiled, a real smile, the first Dean had probably ever seen from him. "You won't." Because Raymond wasn't the same man who'd sat at this table 4 months ago. That man had been drowning in grief, barely surviving, too exhausted to think straight. That man had lost everything that mattered. This Raymond had found something worth fighting for. The game lasted 2 hours. Raymond played with patience and precision, reading Dean's tells like a book he'd memorized, exploiting every weakness, punishing every mistake. Dean grew increasingly frustrated, drinking too much, making errors he wouldn't have made against the broken widower he remembered. Raymond had spent the last 4 months rebuilding himself, eating again, sleeping again, laughing again. Pauline had shown him that he was worth fighting for, and now he was ready to fight. When Raymond laid down his final hand, 4 kings, the bar exploded in cheers and shouts. Dean's face went white. His hands trembled as he stared at the cards like they'd personally betrayed him. Raymond stood slowly, his heart pounding with victory and vindication. "On your feet, Pritchard." For a moment, Dean looked like he might refuse, but the entire bar was watching. Every phone was recording. His reputation, what little remained, hung in the balance. Slowly,
Humiliated, Dean Pritchard stood up.
"Say it," Raymond said quietly. Dean's jaw clenched. "I was wrong about Pauline Dufresne." Louder. Dean closed his eyes. "I was wrong about Pauline Dufresne." His voice cracked with shame. "She's not what I said she was. She's—" He choked on the words. "She's a good person." "Keep going." "She's kind and smart, and she didn't deserve how I talked about her, how any of us talked about her." Dean's face was red, whether from anger or humiliation or both. "And I'm sorry." The bar was completely silent now. Raymond nodded once. "That's all I needed to hear." He turned and walked out of Haggerty's bar without looking back, leaving Dean Pritchard standing there in the ruins of his own cruelty. Outside, the night air was cool and clean. Raymond got in his truck and drove home. To the farmhouse on Miller Road. To the woman who'd saved him. To the life he'd rebuilt from nothing. To home. Raymond and Pauline were married the following autumn in her backyard garden, the same garden where Raymond had first realized he was falling in love with her, where Pauline had taught nature about butterflies, where Pascal had helped harvest vegetables. It was a small ceremony, just family and a handful of friends who'd proven themselves worthy of being there. Pascal served as ring-bearer, looking proud and serious in his little suit. Nature scattered flower petals down the makeshift aisle, giggling with pure joy. Doreen, Raymond's mother-in-law, sat in the front row with tears streaming down her face. Before the ceremony, she'd pulled Raymond aside and said, "Annette would have loved her. She would have wanted this for you. She would have wanted you to be happy." "You really think so?" "I know so. My daughter loved you with everything she had, Raymond. Her last wish was for you to live. Not just survive. Live. You're doing that now. She'd be so proud." As Raymond stood at the altar, really just an archway Pauline had decorated with climbing roses, waiting for his bride, he felt something he thought he'd last forever. Hope. Pauline appeared at the end of the aisle in a simple white dress, flowers in her hair, her face radiant with happiness. She'd lost about 40 pounds over the past year, not through any crash diet or pressure, but simply by being loved, by having reasons to take care of herself again, through joy replacing grief. But Raymond would have married her at any size. He'd fallen in love with her heart first, with her kindness and strength, and the way she'd opened her door to 3 broken people and taught them how to heal. As Pauline walked toward him, slowly, carefully, her smile bright enough to light the whole world, Raymond felt tears sliding down his cheeks. She reached him, took his hands, and whispered, "Thank you for proving them wrong." Raymond smiled through his tears. "Thank you for seeing me." The minister, an old friend of Pauline's father, cleared his throat and began. "Dearly beloved, we are gathered here today to witness the union of 2 souls who found each other in the most unexpected way." Pascal and nature stood beside them, holding hands, their faces beaming. Behind them, the garden Pauline had built with her own hands bloomed in a riot of colors. The farmhouse stood solid and warm, its windows glowing with light. The sky was brilliant blue, clouds drifting lazy and perfect. Everything was perfect. When the minister said, "You may kiss your bride," Raymond pulled Pauline close and kissed her like she was the answer to every prayer he'd forgotten how to pray. The small crowd erupted in applause and cheers. Pascal whooped. Nature bounced on her toes, clapping her hands together. Doreen wiped her eyes and laughed. And somewhere Raymond could have sworn he felt Annette's presence, not sad, not jealous, but happy for him, proud of him, grateful that her children would have a mother who loved them fiercely and completely, grateful that her husband had found a reason to keep living. Dean Pritchard's bet had been designed to destroy him. It had been meant as punishment, as humiliation, as proof that Raymond Calloway had nothing left. Instead, it had given him everything. Later that night, after the guests had left and Pascal and nature were asleep in their beds,
Raymond and Pauline stood together on their porch, their home, their life, watching stars emerge in the darkening sky. "Did you ever imagine this?" Pauline asked, her head resting on Raymond's shoulder. "6 months ago?" "No. 6 months ago, I was just trying to survive each day. I couldn't imagine anything beyond the next hour." He kissed the top of her head. "What about you?" "6 months ago, I was sitting in this house alone, convinced I'd spend the rest of my life being invisible. Then you knocked on my door, and everything changed. Because you let me in. You could have turned us away." "I almost did." Pauline's voice was soft. "I was so scared, Raymond. Scared of being humiliated, scared of letting you see how lonely I was, scared that letting you in would just mean more pain later. But I was angrier than I was scared, and anger saved me." Raymond turned her to face him, his hands gentle on her shoulders. "You saved us. You opened your door and your heart to 3 strangers, and you gave us back our lives. Don't ever forget that. We saved each other, Raymond. I was drowning too, Raymond. You just couldn't see it from the outside." They held each other as the last light faded from the sky and the first stars winked into existence. Inside the house, Pascal and nature slept peacefully, safe and loved. The garden rustled with night sounds, crickets and frogs and the gentle whisper of wind through leaves. This was home. This was family. This was love. Not the first love, not the love Raymond had thought he'd have forever, but real love nonetheless. A second chance. A gift wrapped in the ugliest packaging imaginable. A cruel bet. A public humiliation. 3 months meant to break them both. Instead, those 3 months had rebuilt them. "Thank you," Raymond whispered into her hair. "For what?" "For being brave enough to open that door." Pauline smiled against his chest. "Thank you for being brave enough to walk through it." Sometimes the worst bets lead to the best outcomes. Sometimes losing means winning everything that matters. Sometimes the cruelest intentions pave the way for the greatest blessings. Raymond Calloway walked into a bar broken and desperate, and he'd walked out having made the worst decision of his life. But that decision had led him here, to this woman, this home, this family, this life worth living.
If you've ever felt like your story was over, I hope this reminds you that new chapters can begin in the most unexpected ways, that love can find us even in our darkest moments, that sometimes what looks like an ending is actually a beginning. Because Raymond lost a bet and had to live with a woman everyone called worthless. But she wasn't worthless. She was everything he needed, everything his children needed, wrapped in a package the world had decided didn't matter. They were wrong. Dean Pritchard was wrong. Everyone who'd laughed and mocked and posted cruel messages, they were all wrong. And proving them wrong became the foundation of a beautiful life. Years later, when Pascal and Nature were grown with families of their own, they'd tell the story of how their father won back his life by losing a poker game. How 3 months in a farmhouse on Miller Road became forever. How the woman everyone called a punishment became the greatest blessing their family ever received. And Raymond and Pauline would sit on their porch swing, the same swing where they'd first really talked, where walls had come down, where love had begun, and they'd hold hands and remember. Remember that sometimes life's greatest gifts come from our lowest moments, that kindness is stronger than cruelty, that love doesn't always look the way we expect it to, that losing can feel a lot like winning when you end up exactly where you belong. If this story touched your heart, if you've ever felt broken and found yourself healing in unexpected places, if you believe in second chances and the power of kindness, I'd love to hear from you in the comments. Share your own story of finding hope in dark places. Let's remind each other that our stories aren't over yet.
And if you're going through something difficult right now, please remember, your next chapter might just be one unexpected moment away, one door opening, one person seeing you, one chance to prove the world wrong about what you're worth. Don't give up. Your story is still being written. Thank you for watching. Until next time, remember that love finds us in the most unexpected places, and sometimes the best bets are the ones we lose.